I definitely had like watched a couple of your videos beforehand. I was like, oh, like, like, yeah, I definitely haven't creeped your content or anything. But yes, I watched when I was first like starting playing guard like last November. I started like I like it was like, oh, like this is cool, like this is helpful, and like,
Mhm.
I don't watch all 100% everything, but
That's
it
okay.
definitely like yeah, but it definitely like I have seen a couple of these before. Like I usually watch the ones with like Nemo or like Purcell and like a couple of the other ones, but
Yeah, totally fair.
I do like I do like this stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get started then. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Tactical Debrief. I'm, of course, Josh Yoshi Howard. I'm joined here today by Ken Bush after his 7-1 run at Tacoma Open. Ken, let's go ahead and get started with this relatively quickly. How did you feel about the list that you took to Tacoma? Because I took one look and I was like, this seems good enough, but you went way farther than I think the list probably should have.
Yeah, that is totally fair. My method of list creation was basically putting out my guard list on my display board on Thursday morning before registration and having my Sisters of Battle display board right next to it and deciding that I thought Canis looked better on the Imperial Guard one, which is some of my list choice. There's maybe a little more thought than that, but it was can I kill knights? Can I kill some Death Guard? Can I score well? And like that was kind of like the crux of like my
Yeah.
list decisions.
And so it's just like check, check, check. It's like, well, we've hit all the boxes. Let's go ahead and get out there.
Yeah, let's roll the dice. I've loved Hammer the Emperor since they dropped the new codex. Like that's probably been my favorite detachment. Not that I'm like a combined hater or anything.
Mm.
I like tank go fast, dude in car or dudette in car. So
Yeah.
for me, it was just like a natural blend of the things that I like with a super unit that seemed like it would kind of be like a natural mesh.
Yeah. I mean, let's go ahead and talk about your history a little bit as well, because I know you told me fairly recently that you've only fairly recently become a guard player. But I remember when I first started, like, when I first moved to Pacific Northwest and I saw your name, I was like, oh, this guy plays Sisters. So what happened to the transition from Sisters to guard? Why did you start playing this new army?
Yeah, so it's a pretty easy explanation. So last Tacoma Open, I took Sisters of Battle. I think I got 16th place. I scrubbed out in round 8 against Stu Angel. Fantastic guy. Glad we have imported him from the UK. But I played the heck out of Sisters. I've won GTs with Sisters. I feel like I need that army back in my hand. But for me personally, I usually start a new army in an edition. And in 10th,
Mm.
I really hadn't done that. And I I'm gonna just have like hand on the Bible for a moment. I used to be a guard hater. I was a big guard hater. I was a guard good, game bad guard hater.
Yeah.
And that it wasn't really helped in like early 10th when it was like mana coring people off the table. Like that's not really my ideal option. I've always avoided exorcists and sisters, except ironically. And then the fact that they made it so you didn't have to crutch on artillery, you could play tanks or dudes on foot and like have a cohesive force was really cool. So come October when they started hammering sisters, I was like, I kind of need a new army. I'm playing on a team. I need something that I can actually bring to the team and not feel like I'm scrubbing out immediately with just really like backhanded rules.
Yeah.
So for me, guard was like the next like evolution of I want to play T3 idiots running across the table. I want to be control the scenario. I want to be able to like choose the scoring path of the game. And so guard felt like a natural evolution. I've been in love with Gaunt's Ghost since I was like 12 years old. That was such a cool thing for me to like, well, I guess maybe we make them the focal point of the army. So I have Tanith 101st, and that's how I've hobbied up my guard army since October of last year. My first event with them was LVO this year. I went 5-1. And then I ran a lot of Bridgehead in teams when that was pretty solid. Pretty good record with those. And then when Hammer the Emperor came out, I was in love. And
Yeah.
that's kind of been my favorite go-to guard detachment since early this year.
Nice. I mean, I imagine that the transition from like Bringers of Flame to Hammer the Emperor is a fairly natural one. They're both like fast gun good, T10 plus, and just you just go and blast people off the table. So it is kind of cool to see that the transition and all the skills that you built up with one army have transitioned. Now that you've had like the time to play through the different archetypes of guard, you have like after Hammer, is there anything else that is like drawing you to the guard codex, or was it a lore thing that brought you over to this faction?
I would honestly say that lore was like my initial like feet in and sort of understanding like what I would want to get the most out of guard.
Hmm.
With guard, this has actually been the kind of the first faction for me that I've been pretty shameless about. Like I want to pick up what is the good units and
Yeah.
like those things, but I haven't compromised like what I want to look cool and like what I enjoy building. But it's been so nice to be able to like, I'm going to play Hammer this weekend. I'm going to play Combine next weekend. And I've been dabbling a little bit with Recon and, just like getting your feet wet with 200 plus guardsmen. So it's been so cool to like, one of the biggest thing that I had when I was like, I'm going to put Sisters on the shelf for a while. Like, I'm going to just like expand my skills as a player is I want to be able to play a different list every weekend and not feel like I'm being punished for doing so. And guard really lends itself to that as you can play Hammer one weekend, combined recon. You can play different builds within those. And that's what I found the most fun for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is one of the things that, especially when you talk about like looking for an army for teams, I feel like Guard is one of the best armies for teams in that regard. Because I don't know what your conversation with your team has been, my conversation with my team has been. Look, I'm playing guard. I can do whatever skew is best for the team's matrix. If you want me to play recon, like it's not my favorite way to play, but I can do it. If you want me to be first defender and play 8 tanks or more than that on an open board, I can do that. If you want me to be the forgotten eighth player and I'm just playing whatever singles game you want, I can do that. Like I just need to know, and then I can build a list for that. So it sounds awesome that you kind of found a way to kind of build that in. But I kind of want to talk a little bit before we start talking about Tacoma itself. I know you've been a strong player for a long time. So what was the journey like in order to become, or to kind of get to where you are now? And what armies did you do it with along the way?
Yeah, so it's actually pretty funny. I would say my more competitive side with Warhammer 40,000's really been in like later ninth and early 10th. I started playing a long time ago. I took a really long break from from this game when kind of like sixth edition, seventh edition came about because those
I
were
heard
the
they were
dark
not
ages.
good.
They were not good. So I needed a really competitive war game to kind of fuel me in the meantime. I found War Machine. There's a lot of folks that are in the Pacific Northwest. It's huge up here. It was huge up here. And played the heck out of that and just really enjoyed like that gets into the minutia of like movement and reactions and like there's a lot of kind of like cutthroatiness in like a good way, but like the game is inherently built upon that principle rather than like I feel like people are used to gotchas in 40k where it is really like not how you should be playing the game.
Hmm.
It was more this is totally open information all the time. If you don't know something, it is truly your own fault because you could just look it up while we're at the table.
Hmm.
Here 40k there's too much information to have that at all times. You should rely a little bit on your opponent to like at least warn you what they have in advance, or if you don't ask the questions it's up to you. But I took a really long break and then came back like end of 8th edition. 40k drew me back in and really across I built up a whole new Space Marine army. I have Crimson Fists that sit in a display case over here that rip guys. I don't know when I'm going to get you on the table in a tournament next, but at some point I hope. And then from there it was Sisters, and
Hmm.
Sisters I really like built a lot of like foundational skills from like the later half of ninth through the rest really. I was also playing Grey Knights. They're actually down here. I'm very excited to get them back on the table a little bit here coming up with their new
Yeah, new
book.
codex.
But I played armies that were like really strong on scenario or that had interesting tricks that like dictated your opponent's decisions where they can choose to pop this or they can choose to engage with this. And I have a plan for either. And I really enjoyed that part of the game. Like Grey Knight's dynamicism in the 10th has been cool. They were much more straight and to the point in ninth. But coming and porting across to 10th, I played Death Watch. I play all the Inquisition factions. That's why my guard like Inquisition themed. So I've kind of played highly mobile armies and definitely like coming back to the game, spending a lot of time with those armies first rather than playing armies that are like a more traditional play style. It almost made it easier to transition to guard, which fundamentally are drive here, do thing. Whereas I'm used to having a lot more tricks up my sleeve. It felt nice to be able to like have had all of the crutches and things kind of before. Now that it gets kicked out, now it's just more
Yeah.
fundamentals around being in positionally strong places, forcing a lead or not forcing a lead if you're playing in our current meta of challenger cards, and then also just being able to kind of dictate the pace of the game.
Hmm.
that's just been it's been such a fun journey. So guard has really just been a fun evolution of that. It makes some of my friends kind of mad because it's my team name is skill based. They always tease me about that because I feel like I haven't really ever played super broken armies, or at least I've owned them. But
Mhm.
it's been funny like having to like pivot to guard, like guard being the last stop of the last bastion that I wasn't going to cross, and so here we
That's really
are.
funny. I think it's
Yeah.
really interesting seeing like the perception that different people have of guard in like different places that I've gone to. Because down in SoCal, guard is one of those kind of like hidden gems. There's plenty of guard players down in SoCal, but there's not that many of them that are that good, to be entirely honest. But up here in the Pacific Northwest, you have plenty of guard players, but it seems like all the ones I've heard about are all they're all pretty darn good, right? Like Brandon Cading or whatever, who recently moved
Yeah.
away. He was a very strong player. Gabe from the Rain City Witch Pigeons, also pretty good. Um, there was another name, but it feels like there are more strong guard players up here now that you're playing as well. It just feels like, well, if you hit guard, it doesn't matter if it's round 1 or round 4. It's going to be like, okay, we're going for a big slugging match. So it's going to be it's really interesting to see like that dichotomy coming through.
Yeah, I remember it's a very formative moment as a teenager when Leaf Blower Guard was a real build, and like just having that negative bad taste in your mouth when like the natural response to Leaf Blower was, okay, I guess they're gonna play Drukhari, which is just like that's a no. There's a
Yeah.
no win scenario here.
Now,
It's the war games. The only way to win is not to play.
yeah, I kind of know what that means, but I wasn't really competitive at that time. What does that mean for anybody who's like relatively new to the game?
Yeah, so back in the day, True Line of Sight was the end all be all. There was no concept of obscuring or like footprints or ruin templates, and there's something gets lost with immersion along the way. But I would rather have what we have now versus then,
Hmm.
because one of the popular builds at the time was with the Vendetta gunship, which I think has been DC'd at this point, because it was just the 6 to 9 las cannon
Yep.
flyer that could see everything, and you could get orders and just hammer turn 1. You were rewarded for first blood, so killing the first unit, which turns out you would be very good at if you had 3 of these things looking at
Also
you.
going first.
Also basilisks, also because indirect pie plates was a thing, so shooting the actual templates out of line of sight. There wasn't any random hits if you just like scattered into where they had clustered up as a large hole. You would just put holes in their yeah, between that and Russ tank line, because Russes were people joke about how cheap Russes are now. Russes were even cheaper back then. It's just it's a funny. I'm much happier with Guard in the place it is today. I'm sorry for all the old heads that oh no, you can't run your formations and stuff. It's like this is better health
Yeah,
overall.
I think on kind of that topic, the funny thing for me is like on the one hand, if I were to just like sit down and I'm drinking with my buddies and I just wanted to play a game, I would actually want to play like 5th edition just because it is silly and there's so many crazy things going on that you're just like, you cannot like attach yourself to the outcome of the game in 5th edition because there's so much random nonsense that's happening. But one of the things that really gets me is like whenever people are like, why are Leman Russes so durable? Like in this edition, it's like they used to have
But
this.
you
They used to be the same toughness as land raiders. like
yeah,
they
you
used
could
to be
not
absolutely
physically
insane.
wound them with like a bolt gun, or
Yeah,
you just physically couldn't do damage to them with most small arms fire. Now
yeah,
you like have a chance, or you have the ways to skew your odds to have a chance. You just did not exist before.
yeah. What was it? Las cannons. Like your las cannons would only wound a Leman Russ on a 5. So it's just like it was absolutely crazy. But anyway, before I'm sure we could talk about old versions of 40K for a long time. Let's go ahead and start talking about what we did most recently, and that was
Yeah.
at Tacoma. And Ken, I know that you said that you kind of had your list put together about the night before, the morning of, or something like that. What were the driving factors? Or no, let's go ahead. You already told us a little bit about that. Let's go ahead and talk about what the actual list. Do you have your list ready to just talk about?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So from the top, hot Canis summer, time as a circle. The summer of '69 linked in the YouTube link below that. Hammer the Emperor, Gaunt's Ghosts, 2 Rogal Dorn commanders, 1 with veteran crew. I'm a Meltas all the way down. I don't believe in the extra stubbers.
Fair.
10 Cadians, 2 Tauroxes, 10 Kasrkin, which I love, 2x5 engineers, which I think people find strange, 2 demo Russes, which I think was a hot take, but I was interested in, and then Ratlings, a Scout Sentinel, and Canis Rex, just the third Dorn commander, as I jokingly referred to him all weekend.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. There's a couple pieces in here that were pieces that I was not necessarily expecting to see in a couple of lists. You mentioned one of them already. Engineers, 5-man engineers, they've really fallen out of favor for a lot of people. What made you decide to put them in this version of the list as opposed to 10 Catachans, or maybe combining them to unit of Kasrkin or something?
Yeah, so actually, this is some learning. So I actually played Brandon Kading up at Wet Coast Warbands a couple of months ago,
Mm.
and we basically played the Hammer Mirror, where we were like identical lists, like minus a couple of things.
Yeah.
And he went to 3x5 engineers back then when they were a little better. I think this was just recently post their mine nerf, but they were still worthwhile to take. Nowadays, in the year of our Lord, Imperial Knights, Chaos Knights, Death Guard, tough vehicles. I just find having the ability to occasionally just take some extra wounds off between the mine and the grenades, like it's not guaranteed. There are going to be games where it fails. I think 2 of my games this weekend, I failed to get the Kasrkin mine and either engineer. So like at that point, it was just dead points. But I have valued the extra 4+ save, just it is that like psychological element of slightly less Overwatch at this 5-man unit, because the 5-man disincentivizes people to Overwatch them, whereas they're waiting for a 10-man, or they're holding for Kasrkin or something that's going to be more dynamic. So the 5-mans independently kind of reduce the effect of that. And then the second, and something I did a lot this weekend, is throwing out only one unit at a time. A couple of times into Death Guard, it was stage a Taurox aggressively, have one squad of engineers hop out, go bind something, grenade something, maybe just bully charge a Rhino, but they're forcing the line back, and then I still have another squad of Taurox ready to go. So, if I need to, I can commit 2. If I need to only commit 1, I just have to commit 1. But it gets me more value out of the Tauroxes that way, because then I just only have to take the 2.
Yeah.
So that was
wait,
the engineers for me were clutch.
Are they running around in the same Taurox then?
Yeah, the two squads of 5.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a different perspective than I think a lot of people have seen on this. I think the only other person who did reasonably well with engineers was Peter Venner, who was playing a very interesting recon element list at this event. But it makes a lot of sense. I feel like combat engineers have been one of those units that's just kind of sinking right beneath the surface, that a lot of people are just like, well, I have Catachan and I have Kasrkin, but it's like engineers, maybe not always the most optimal version, but I mean, they're just right there. They're just right underneath the surface. The other one that I want to talk about in terms of the guard units is the Leman Russ Demolisher. What was the thought process behind taking this? And before you answer, I've played this 4 or 5 times on TTS. Every single time, they do absolutely nothing. So I'm kind of curious what your perspective was on putting these into the list.
Yeah, so these were definitely the danger pick in terms of I think this is gonna single-handedly determine whether I have a good time this weekend or whether I don't. Two reasons. One, when we were doing initially Hammer, I was a big fan of the double Leman Russ battle tank, maybe an exterminator. I even was running the Novican one around a little bit just to have something that's cheap with flamers. I've never been a big Vanquisher believer, because just for me, I don't like one shot that sometimes does a lot of damage. So for me, in my head, is thinking about, we're going to see a lot of Death Guard. We're going to see a lot of Knights. We're going to see a lot of things that have more than 3 wounds that I'm worried about. And the Leman Russ is immediately less appealing to me, because it takes 2 confirmed wounds from a Top Gun from a Leman Russ to kill a Death Shroud Terminator. And that is scary, because you only have so many shots with said Leman Russ before they get to you, or you are no longer combat viable. The other thing is, I was expecting Emperor's Children to kind of be a sleeper, in terms of there's going to be a lot of EC at this event. They want to be in your face. They want to be charging you. They want to constantly be touching you. The Demolishers can just advance onto a point turn 1 and manifest threat, and then they never have to move again, and they can still shoot. And that was a big part of why for only a 5-point premium per Russ now at the 185 that regular Lemans are, it was going to be these or the Demolishers. I also liked the appealing thought of an unsaved wound from a Demolisher turret can kill a Dust Shroud. This Demolisher turret also wounds Knights on 3s. Most of the things that I'm worried about this thing killing don't have negative hit debuffs for the most part, minus Chaos Knights, but I can control that a little bit, because I'm going to probably be with an 18 anyway. Yeah. But I'm most worried about hit debuffs. I'm less worried about wound debuffs when it's just the 3s to wound. And these were great. They ended up actually being absolute MVPs probably most of this weekend. I had one at one point drive over with Take Aim, get 7 shots, basically 1 shot in Atropos, because he had rotate up, but he failed 4 saves, and then it just sunk a ton of damage into them.
Yeah.
I'm in love with these things. I'm going to play them some more, I think, because being able to fall back and shoot the pickle, being able to just kind of abandon it to its fate and just let it shoot without debuffs but still hitting on fours, like that's an order saved if you don't need to, like if someone's popping smoke or something, popping smoke, sorry, but there's like a couple of situations where like you don't necessarily need to order it because it's going to be the same as what you'd be hitting on anyway.
Yeah.
So that's the part for me is I thought these were great, and they
Interesting.
tag teamed around with the Rogal Dorns.
Fair. So I guess one of the big things about them for me is the kind of like you're touching on, right? Like they kind of do their own thing. They do have it's like rolling a d6, the dopamine d6. How many shots do I get? Into like another dopamine d6. Like how much damage do I do? It's just like doesn't feel like it has a lot of consistency. Was that something that you were concerned about with this, or how do you play around with these, knowing that they could do 40 damage or they could do 2?
Yeah, so there was a couple of thoughts with this. One, I noticeably like don't take Lord Solar or anything in this at this point. I'm pretty judicious with my CP usage, where I try not to overspend. I did spend CP reroll fairly often this weekend. Like if I got one to just roll one, it was like, look, I'm better shots at rerolling this to get a number of shots that I can then hit on threes to threes versus like trying to reroll a hit roll. I know a lot of people like hover like on a hit or a wound reroll, and I try not to do that. For me personally, I kind of just, instead of having to grenade, because the only thing throwing grenades was engineers, they kind of took that cost away from me. So I could basically kind of sit on a CP for rerolling a number of shots if I needed to for consistency. They definitely were a little bit like flippy. Like games 1 and 2, I don't think they rolled above like a 3 total shots. Like I didn't really need them in my first couple of games, but when it came time to pound some knights, they were cooking. My poor buddy Jaden, like one of them just looked at a Chaos Knight, rolled 7 shots, got like 6 hits and like 6 wounds, and he was like failed a bunch of saves. So I think I'd rather have the variance be a little bit in my corner in terms of the only major failure point for that is the number of shots. I don't really have to reroll hits if I'm keeping my Scout Sentinel safe, and the wounds are sometimes you're going to roll low, but often enough with as much volume as you have between this and the Dorns, I found it kind of smoothed out.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Where you just, if you're able to save that CP, that is the biggest spot where you need it, is just the number of shots, and I that makes a lot of sense because it doesn't have like, that's one of the things that I've always valued the battle tank for, is it's just really consistent in the amount of damage that it does. But Demolisher doesn't have that consistency, but sometimes you will just kill a 400-point model, which makes a lot of sense. With that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about the 400-point model that you have in your army. There is Canis Rex, and this is one of the other units that I've heard different things from different people on how much they've actually liked it. In general, my perspective is, well, I could just put 2 battle tanks in the list, and that's about the same number of points. But most of the people who've been taking Canis Rex in their guard list are not doing nearly as well as you. So what was the usage of Canis Rex in your list? Was he rapid ingressing a lot? Was he on the board? Were there any like units that he was trying to tag team with? What is he doing?
Yeah, so I'm going to say something immediately controversial here. I did not rapid ingress Canis one time this weekend. Canis started on the board 8 out of 8 games.
Wow.
I don't think that's true. Every mission pack, every set of maps, everything. But all of the people that I played against, I was able to keep him at least hidden enough where he wasn't going to get blasted turn 1, and that wasn't going to be a concern. But I honestly used him as just a giant heroic intervention bot that has a good gun and can just turbo punt something into the sun occasionally. He also, in my mind, oh, I'm so sorry. I think your video might have just.
I'm still here. The recording is still going, so I'll try and get that back up. But
all good. That just threw me for a second.
Yeah.
But I honestly used him as a distraction card effects more than anything else. I would have a Dorn in either shooting lane and then have a Demolisher Russ nearby. And Canis would basically just pick whatever side he needed to go to. And kind of like lurk behind the central ruin or off to a flank where he could just walk over and then immediately impact it, providing he didn't roll 1 battle shock, which he did once this weekend, which is an acceptable amount of times. But I used him more as if they had a lot of melee in their army, I could use him to heroic into a Dorn, or at least dissuade them from charging my tanks. Or I would use him to just, you have a lot of Death Shroud that are going to rapid ingress. I'm going to keep him touching the ruin where I know you're going to try and put them over here and just try to keep this flank secure. So for me, he was actually the most disposable tank in the army because I would usually keep him pretty close to the. A lot of the ruins we played on this weekend had like a center. We were on like layout 2 or layout 6 or layout 1. So you have a lot of the like protective areas. So I would often just bail out Hector if he died in a place where he was really annoying to get to. And that was a good people didn't take fixed against me. When they did take, bring it down or assassinate, he was very hard to get to. But for me, he was frankly the most disposable piece of my army. I think he died 5 or 6 times this weekend, which is an acceptable number of times to me because I think I only lost both Dorns in one game, and it was my last game against Imperial Knights.
Yeah, that honestly sounds about right. Like every time I've ever played more than one Dorn, it's like, well, if I lose both, I probably lose the game, but I basically never lose both. So that's really interesting that Canis is so disposable because he is just so many points of the army, and I love the idea, the fact that you're kind of touching on Games Workshop terrain with all the different mission packs where you can just like tow into the middle ruin. You can now see basically the entire board, right? Like you can't see into their castle, but
Yeah.
if nothing can see into their castle, that's not really an issue that we're really planning around. The biggest thing for me that I'm kind of looking at is Canis Rex is one of those models, kind of like our Demolishers, that is really asking for the CP reroll and the number of shots. So how are you trying to like budget the CP between these two units that are both asking for it?
I usually shot him first, and then if he just genuinely, I usually shoot him first. If he rolled a 1, I was like, well, flip. Or if it was more important that the Demolisher shot first, I might have them go
Yeah.
see what the roll was. But that was the kind of the decision point. Is if I could get greedy, I'd usually have him shoot first. If I needed to guarantee success with the Demolisher, usually he would shoot first. I was also using him as like a 1-to-1, like a 2-for-1 trade piece with like knights because I was
Mhm.
worried about melee knights or chaos knights having kind of like a combination piece. So he could come on, put some hate into something, and then charge and hopefully kill something else and just get a 2-for-1 special. Can't do that with a Dorn these days, so unless they're on 1 and you tank shock them. So it was nice having the duality value from him.
Yeah, that's one of the other things that I'm kind of curious because one of the things that instantly came to mind for me when I saw the Knights change is, well, Hammer already has the go through walls strat, and then you have super heavies, super heavy walkers, which can just also go through walls. How often were like Canis and like a Dorn like buddies like crash through a wall, double Kool-Aid Man, and just blowing up one side of the board?
That would probably be my first 2 games for sure, which was just I got to go first, and they were not going to be able to deploy safe enough or in a way that was meaningful. So that happened a lot. I think against most of the Death Guard games, and Death Guard's so much about spacing anyway. And then against Imperial, I definitely went push the full send button into Imperial Knights in my round 8. But otherwise, like it definitely was a pretty common combination to have Canis more towards the center and then a Dorn on either side of him, and
Hmm.
whichever side Canis needed to go support, it was usually the 2 tanks plus Canis, and then he might be able to start working his way back the other.
Nice. So he's the rapid reaction force in here.
Yeah,
Cool.
exactly. He's my rapid intervention.
Yeah. So I'm kind of looking at this. One of the big things that I always try and do in my list is I try and have like a total like effective unit count of somewhere in the neighborhood of like 13 to 15. Any lower than that is where I start to get like, I don't know if I have enough things to play the board. This is like right on the cusp of that because you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. But a lot of them are just going to evaporate, right? The Ratlings are going to go up in smoke. The Scout Sentinel is going to die very quickly. The 5-man engineers, if your opponent wants them dead, they are going to die. Taurox's, Kasrkin, same thing. How do you budget your units over the course of the game? Because it feels like you have 3 pieces which are very hard to kill in your Dorns and Canis. You have the Demolishers, which are in the middle, and then you have the rest of it that just will disappear. How do you use your units collectively in order to play 5 rounds, or do you try not to play 5 rounds?
I would say I'm often trying not to play 5 rounds if I can help it. Like I'm trying to just go for the throat in the first 3 turns with this kind of a list, especially when the GW boards can reward really strong shooting angles. I can outrange Death Guard. I can generally outrange Imperial Knights until you have to like really push into them. But that 24-inch range is scary when you're thinking about Atropy. And but overall for me, like so much of my deployment, I kind of so the one major thing in the concession I made is that Gaunt's Ghost being the warlord, because knowing Imperial Knights are going to be such a prevalent part of the field, that meant that I was going to be very sparing with how I threw them away because I don't want them to die early, them get a Warlord proc, and then me be miserable the rest of the game. So I usually insulated those pretty well. I feel like a lot of the current day armies, Death Guard, Imperial Knights, Chaos Knights, again, like they have to put something in the middle. I feel reasonably confident I can shoot off most of what they put.
Mhm.
If they all rush at me, I'm kind of okay with that too, provided I can then just start move blocking and dictate engagements. I feel like a lot of my success kind of came from a combination of the Ratlings. Meal Team 6 continues to be like the best unit in my army, bar none. Um, I'll wax eloquently about them all day. But just move blocking between them, engineers being able to just prevent knights or vehicles moving through an area, and then kind of just saying catch to a rhino and then maybe just ruining it stay. I usually try not to throw away too many units. I usually try to be very conservative. Like I'll take a primary deficit in the first couple of turns if I can catch up. And I also was very careful with Scout Sentinel. I don't think I scouted him to the middle a single game this weekend. He was usually scouting to get to a more secure position or like a pocket where he could just peek out daring recon something and then just be pretty safe from reprisal. Because the veteran crew Dorn is amazing.
Yeah.
But the other tanks really need that reroll ones to hit help. So I would usually be very sparing with that one. Like that would be, if I play Area Denial and Locus on like turn 2, all right, buddy, sorry, it's probably your time. But I wasn't going to get him thrown away on turn 1. I wasn't going to go bully charge something on turn 1 and just watch him die immediately. So if I got to go first, slam pressure. If I went second, slam aggressive staging. And it was kind of the combination of those two and some functional differences whether you're playing like Death Guard or tank spam.
Yeah, totally fair. That's kind of actually leading into my last question before we start talking about the games, is this list kind of struggles to screen the backfield, right? You don't have that many things that are holding our deployment zone, and there are some deployment zones in this mission pack which were huge. Mission 6, for example, where you just cannot screen your entire backfield. What are you doing into things like Death Shroud Terminators or maybe Death Watch or anything that has a really heavy, like, I'm going to be behind you style of gameplay with this that doesn't necessarily have the units to consistently screen everything out and still play the midboard?
Yeah, so that was a very conscious choice in a lot of games. Since I just have the 10 Cadians, and against lists that had a lot of deep strike threats, they tended to live in the backfield until they would go somewhere else. I found that this kind of list pulls so much of the aggro away from your backfield because they have to find a way to deal with 2 Dorns, 2 Russes, and Canis in a meaningful amount of time before they go down to their ship. They're also, just in this particular mission pack, I didn't have to keep things back as hard because there weren't a lot of missions that required backfield control. Take and hold mattered. We played supply drop. Linchpin, you're leaving the Cadians there all game because you're just going to do it anyway. But there were so many of them that required you or encouraged you to be in the middle, terraform, etc. I kind of just felt fine. Like if they wanted to deep strike something 9 inches away from my units, it's okay. I was pretty aggressive with screening Cadians, where if they're never going to be able to touch the backfield, they're just going to just dog bone out into my backfield and push them super far out. I often used Gaunt's Ghost if I wasn't pulling action secondaries with them too. They would just drop backfield. They would just hang out and just kind of keep the whole line between them and the Cadians. You can pretty much keep your entire deployment zone screened for the most part, minus a few exceptions.
Yeah.
But I also just found in the list that I was playing, a lot of people weren't really in our world of Knights and Death Guard. Like no one wants to drop Death Shroud Terminators. If they can't do 6-inch deep strike in your backfield, they don't want to drop Death Shroud back there because they're going to be there doing nothing functionally for the rest of the game. And I think the army choices kind of force them to commit those actual like good deep strike threats to the front. And then Cadians can then just go, stand in the middle objective on turn 5 and do something.
Yeah.
It was something I was worried about. I've actually taken a Cyclops in other lists before just to have a 25-point idiot to leave in the corner and just say, no, you can't come back here. But I didn't have the points available in this list. So it was a compromise in list construction.
Totally fair. Yeah, I think that makes sense, right? You have to build for the meta that you're currently playing in. Like the Death Shroud Terminators, sure, they can go kill the Cadian, but that means that they are now not hitting your Rogal Thorns. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. And they don't have that many things. Like Mortarian's Hammer doesn't have that many things that actually consistently kill Dorn. So makes a lot of sense. Normally, at this point, Ken, we would start going through all of the games, but that's because most events only have 5 of them. So let's go ahead and let's try and talk about like 3 or 4 that you think are particularly interesting. So,
Sure.
go ahead and pull up what you had, people you played against. Was there a first game? Let's try and kind of chronological. 'Cause you had Matthew Hardy, Dave Quinn, and then Jaden as your first three. Is there one of those that you think is the most interesting?
I will very quickly speak to the Matt and Dave games,
Hmm.
but we'll talk about the Jaden game.
Sure.
Matt game, darling guy playing EC, go wide EC strategy, lots of infiltrators. I got to go first. That army ceases to be. That's that game in a nutshell. We kind of
Fair.
called it top of like top or bottom of two. I can't remember.
Hmm.
Dave playing a Firestorm Assault Force with like Land Raiders repulsors. We're playing on layout one. We talked about the fact there's a shooting lane from deployment to like the safe side of your L on that. I reminded him. I told him twice. He said it'll be fine. And then a Dorn proceeded to pick up the Land Raider, and then the other Dorn proceeded to kill all 6 Blade Guard and the 2 characters attached to it in one shooting activation. And we did dirty things the rest of that game. So that's why that is. Canis got to walk onto a midfield
That's
objective, terraform or do an action, shoot something. Like it was just kind of over really quickly.
I remember seeing you walking around pretty early in both of those rounds.
Yeah,
Checks out.
Yeah. Darling opponents just were not prepared for the quantity and quality of shooting,
Yeah.
which is totally fine. The Jaden round is definitely like that's Jaden's won best overall the last 2 years. He's frankly he's my best friend. He's staying at my house. We're riding in every morning together, and there's 127 undefeated people. And that's how we get paired up in round 3. Sucks to suck, I guess. He's playing Traitoris Lance, so he's playing the 6 or Lords of Dread, excuse me. That's what the old one used to be called. Now that's what's called. But he's playing 6 bigs, so he's doing the triple A bomb, Melta Despoiler, double Melta Despoiler, double Gatling Despoiler, and a Rampager. That's a lot of beef. Two fortunate things with this. It's supply drop, which means I can play incredibly safe and just forfeit a bit of a primary lead to try and hang in late game. And it's on layout, the new layout 8, which I and several others were thinking this game is going to suck because of the layout. I can't shoot anything. But because it's supply drop and you can't realistically hold those without touching the terrain features as big knights, means I just never crossed the center. I just forfeited a ton of space. I would send out probes of Ratlings or engineers just to prevent move blocks. Ratlings were key here because on turn 2, they basically came out from behind my safe U, moved, shot, scooted, and then basically just pushed a whole ingress or deep strike ability from a big knight very far back into his deployment zone. So Ratlings again continue to just be clutch. The main things from this game is that this army had the firepower to kill 2 big knights in a turn.
Yeah.
That was just the main all be all. I kept Canis. This is one of the matchups where I didn't throw Canis away early because him going 2 for 1 here is tremendous. He ended up only going half for 1, which was a bit of a bummer, but it ended up being a very, very close game. On round 5, when we're fighting over the central, I got to go second. That was the big thing about this game too, is second being huge. His objective disappeared first, which meant my objective disappeared first. But because of the way that 8 and supply drop interact, it was safer for me to have it be in his deployment zone because I could see with more of my tanks than the other way around.
Yeah.
But it ends up vanishing. But going into the top of round 5, I think I'm up 55, and I think Jaden is at like 39 points, and he still has 2 big knights left. And it just comes down to some critical failure rolls to hit, not making a charge. He ends up occupying the middle, but it lets me basically put a Dorn and another tank on. I've bracketed his big knights. We duty and honor, we supply drop, and then we kind of just go from there. No Overwatch at all in this army against that army was just tremendous because you got so much more value out of engineers with the Ratlings, and they got to just kind of be abusive. The engineers were absolutely clutch. They just log jammed the L and the new big center ruin for like 2 more turns than they ought to have because they just kept living popping smoke, and then and then they just kept, nope, you can't walk here, nope, you can't walk here, there's too many walls, there's too many guys. Yeah, you can charge and kill me, but do you really want your despoiler to be charging? So it ended up being pretty brutal because of killing at least 4 bigs, 5 characters.
Wow.
So
Yeah. Were you going fixed or tactical for in this game?
I should have mentioned I went fixed because my entire object of this game is Jaden and I have played more games. He was my Warhammer Kryptonite. I've never beat him in the game of War. Excuse me, yes, War
Yeah.
Machine. I've never beat him in the game of War Machine. It has flipped. He has yet to beat me in a competitive event in Warhammer. So I had that going for me. But B, I went fixed because that meant on supply drop with fixed, I can just be incredibly conservative, not throw away anything that didn't need to be thrown away.
Yeah.
I can just deep strike screen, wait till everything comes down, just continue to fire, and try to just remove the knight at that time.
Yeah. One of the big questions I kind of have about your army then is because you have a lot of strength 12 and strength 14 shooting between your Rogal Dorn and the Demolishers. How do you feel like that generally does into knights? Because one of the big things that why a lot of people have gravitated towards combined arms is they have the lethal hits. But do you feel like your army is going to be consistently killing these knights?
Yeah, I felt very good about killing 2 big knights a turn.
Mm-hmm.
The Imperial Knight lists where you have to try and kill 3. That's where I feel like it starts to get a little bit sketchy. This army loves killing armatures now.
Yeah.
Like any armatures just evaporate. It feels so good.
Toughness
But
9
the,
is huge for a Melting Up, guys. It is insane.
yeah, I've played some Bringers of Flame since, and I'm just like, oh, the strength 10 Meltas, it feels so good. But killing the big knights in particular against Chaos Knights, they have the -1 damage in this, in either shooting or fight in this detachment. But they don't have rotate ions, which just means that our like middling AP means you're basically just putting them on their invulns all the time.
Yeah.
So for versus regular knights where you have to worry about them rotating and then suddenly they're saving on 4-ups. Here, I felt like I could be pretty safe just hammering them, and you're gonna fail a number of 5-ups that should hopefully provide me with enough of a gap here to make the difference. In my brain, it has enough, but you could definitely low roll and you could definitely have a bad time. Against Chaos Knights in particular, the main reason I went with Hammer actually for this tournament this weekend is A, the speed, B, fall back and shoot. And just being able to just say, no, this tank is still highly effective and versus what I would expect in combined arms. My tanks get tagged a lot because I'm pretty aggressive with them. Like I like bully charging. I like just charging things on like 2 or 3 and then we're stuck here forever, but I'm stuck here. You're stuck in here with me and I'm shooting out. And I don't get that same result from combined where like, oh, something scammed me. I can't fall back and shoot. I've wasted an entire tank activation. I don't get that same feeling with Hammer.
Totally fair. Cool. So you got your first 3, and you only have 1 more. Is the game against Steven interesting, or is this another one where you're just clubbing seals?
This was there's going to be, I'm going to say one thing. Steven was very nice and we had a great game. Steven had not been using the towering rule all weekend. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
What was he playing?
Imperial Knights. I'm going to just leave that there. He was coming into the 3-0 round undefeated without having to use the towering rule. And we're just going to leave it at that. And that's about everything you need to know about that game.
Okay.
I
did a quick look at the list. You know, Lancers don't really shoot, so it was just Canis Rex that he's kind of missing out on. But, you know, it is what it is. Fair enough.
But also, I guess the second flip point of that is 2 Lancers and Canis with some amount of armatures. Good enough to get you 3-0 to day 2. So,
yeah. Nice. Well, so we got that going through, and for anybody who has not gone to one of these Games Workshop Opens, getting your first 4 wins guarantees you're going to be in the top 32. Once you get that 4-0, or for a couple people there's like 3 wins and a draw, you cannot do worse than 32nd. But it also means that in theory you're playing a lot of really good players back to back to back after that. So we got a couple more. I recognize a couple of these names, but what about between James and Floof? Which one of these do you want to talk about?
The Floof game, I guess I'll talk about the game where I lost. Let's talk about the game where I lost. Was into Floof.
I'm going to take a quick look at what James was playing. James was playing Death Guard Flybone Host. Yeah, it's, Terminators doing things. Okay.
Yeah, -1 to hit against the entire Death Guard army, very annoying. And very annoying. And Lone Op Terminator is also very annoying.
Yeah.
But I will say Hero Kasrkin took a charge from 3 Death Shroud and a Death Lure and whatever the heck their attachment is. He had to pop -1 Contagion to try and keep his vehicle safe. And this was like a key turn. It was like he decided to do that at the beginning, that was going to be his choice. He didn't feel like he needed the AP between Death Shroud and such. 1 Kasrkin lived. Which was just the hero Kasrkin, which just, I don't even think it ended up being relevant, but it was hilarious. But James was great, and it was an interesting off-meta list that I think has some interesting implications. So.
Cool. All right, Floof. Floof, I know, is a fantastic player, one of the best Gene Stealer cult players in the world. He's also got a channel. I might remember to link it. Nexos Floof. If you're interested in learning more about that, go ahead and give him a follow. But this was a game we lost. So what happened?
This was the critical one. Turns out Floof had made the very crucial realization that in a world of hammers, sometimes you just need a bigger hammer.
I
And
thought you were going to
this
say you just
was
need more nails.
I could say, yeah, more nails might work more aptly, but in this case, for like effective fire, there's nothing that kills 4 or 5 hard targets better than Gene Stealer cults. A Host of Ascension is nuts. Floof is an incredibly good player. I loved the heck out of our game. I've never met them before. We got to joking, lots of hugs. We played on Terraforming, on Layout 3, on Dawn of War Super
Oh,
Engagement.
did you go first or
So
second?
I did go first, which is why the score is what it is. Because I instantly came to the realization that I go forward and terraform everything and hope he low rolls me somewhere, and that's my path out. And if I don't do those things, and if I play conservatively, or if I give them even the slightest opening, I'm already dead. So I might as well play to my out. And that was what I tried to do. I scored reasonably well. And by turn 4, I had nothing left because, turns out when they drop in, they just picked up. I don't think I had a single tank make it past an activation of shooting.
Ooh.
And I think I had a Leman die to the full, like, melee of one of the 20 mans, which with lethal sustain, 5-ups, just it's a lot. But I think I made the right gamble. I tried to kill as much chaff as I could without interacting with the big units. That he starts 2 on the table, and if you shoot them, they go back into reserve. So they basically have a functional extra turn of the deep striking shenanigans. So I shot and killed all of the bikes. I shot and killed all the things that I could, like all the little just cruddy 3-mans, 5-mans that would be annoying later. If he wants to burn reinforcement points, be my guest. If they don't, that's totally fine too. But I just tried to play that and got some kill secondaries and got some pieces. I had considered taking fixed, but taking fixed, I don't think I do better because if I leave 1-on-1, then they get away. Like they're basically gone forever.
Yeah.
So I just played more. I'm going to play aggressive. I'm going to hope that I scam him on like just him low rolling damage and a tank living and being able to do something important.
Yeah.
And it just didn't pay off.
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts on this. On this mission, I've played this mission 5 times, including at Tacoma. One of them was at the GT that you guys ran, and then the RTT you guys ran, and then I played it like twice on TTS. I am 3-2 on this mission, but more importantly, in my experience, it's 5-0 the person who went first wins. So it's kind of one of those missions, and one of the big reasons for this is because it's such a big map. Like your No Man's Land objectives are so far apart compared to a lot of other maps that you don't really have the freedom. Like once you're devoted to one side of the board, you're not getting to the other side of the board at all. How did you feel like that was a big impact in this? Did you feel like Floof was more mobile than you, or what was kind of the issue? How did like the push and pull on the board work out?
Yeah, I think against a more conventional army, I actually feel very favored with this because we can cross so much distance with move flat advance and go through walls. And I just said Canis sit directly in the middle, just walk out, stand in the middle, shoot something and terraform the center objective. I kept him off of the terrain, but later he would step onto a ruin to be able to see over and shoot out. But I think 9 times out of 10, in terms of like what we would usually conventionally be fighting, I feel pretty good on this one because the Cadians can keep your back pocket pretty darn secure. They don't have to peek out. You can even keep safe from most 6-inch deep strikes. As soon as you sticky the unsafe side, you can then just get out of cover, just get out of dodge. But just against a uppy downy, shoot me once. If you don't quite kill me, the unit is leaving. Lots of just things to jam me and move block, which Floof did very well because they're a good player. But not being able to like usually press my advantage of superior speed, superior firepower, and that board is very open. I know you ran the triple Vanks at that one a few weeks ago, and like I was super like if it had been any other weekend, that's probably something I would have considered too. But
totally fair.
it just didn't pan out. The normal strengths of the army didn't pay off in this particular matchup. And I also just think tank heavy guard kind of struggles in the GSC anyway. So this was the one matchup I felt the most, if I can just pull this in the shadow round or round 7, like who cares? But I pulled it in round 6, so it's fine.
Totally fair. Yeah. I think for me, kind of going back to the triple vanquisher that I played at, was this at an RTT? No, we played it at the GT. I think I played a similar list both times. Either way, the bigger point was when I played at your guys' RTT, I played it into Tyranids. I killed 2 Maleceptors, a Tyrannofex, and put a second Tyrannofex on 4 wounds on the top of 1. Like that's why I brought that, because looking at like the Edmonton thing is just like, no matter what, with 3 of these missions where whoever goes first wins in shooting matchups, I will always have a 50-50 chance of just winning the game because I go first. So it kind of makes sense. Like Gene Stealer Colts, one, they're kind of weird. I know that you have time, like you get to play against him, who plays Gene Stealers to a decent amount to at also a high level. But I also feel like this is a game where I was listening to someone talk about it, and they were just saying Gene Stealers, like, you don't really prep for very much because like 1 in 400 people plays them, and it's like, oh no, I hit one of the best Gene Stealer Cult players in the United States. Darn, like sometimes it happens. Is that something that you feel like played a big role in this game?
I definitely I feel like I could beat most Gene Cult players on a good day. I feel like Floof had the bit of like the list matchup advantage. I definitely think that they preyed upon me a little bit. I've walked through that game in particular a lot and just thought about like what I would do differently. And I have kind of come to the conclusion I don't think I would have changed much. I still would have come just roaring out of the gates, trying to stand on the midfield. They're going to be able to see me anywhere they want to in the next couple of turns anyway. I'm going to kill as much as I humanly can without giving them an offensive advantage by shooting the big 20-man mobs. I'm going to kill all the extra things that could do actions. I'm going to make him have to choose between doing actions, re-terraforming, and having cheap idiots to come screen me with. So that was what I felt pretty safe with. Also, turn 1, because there's so much in reserve, as long as they don't go back into reserve, I don't give them the free out, then I'm going to just try and scam and hold off as long as I can with primary. Nope, not required. A Benefactus walked out from behind the wall on turn 1, and I think put that unit with no real buffs, put Canis to like 13 wounds.
Oops.
So it just was like, well, all right, sometimes this happens.
Yeah.
But that's okay. So I felt all right with the loss. It was actually really relieving to banish Floof to the Shadow Realm, because then we all got to go eat dinner and I couldn't complain. But otherwise, I will think about that game a lot. And I've already kind of played a run back game with Tim, just in terms of what we would change. But we didn't find the outcome was that different.
Totally fair. Yeah, I feel like that's always a generally pretty good place to be in. It's like, well, I feel like I played well. Sometimes it's a bad matchup. Sometimes the dice don't let you. I had a similar thing in round 3, so it is what it is. With that though, you find yourself at, what is that, 5-1 going into the 3rd day. We got a game up against Zach Starcher and a game going up against Joseph Wilging. Which one do you want to talk about?
I will probably talk about the Death Guard game, because
Okay.
I think it's a little bit more interesting than the night game. The night game turned into essentially just a shootout. He rolled a little bit hotter than I did at first, and then I scammed him on points because we had kind of handshaken away challenger cards in round 8 of the Tacoma Open. We were like, but neither of us wanted to have a win just get dominated there.
Yeah.
It would have impacted the game in some form or fashion. I went and just like, yeah, we just I went and drew cards at home afterwards, and two out of 3 games I win, 1 out of 3 games he wins, based on like, if nothing else changed, like what else could we have done?
Totally.
So I feel fine with that, but also Gaunt's Ghost being Warlord, huge, because he didn't die until turn 4 and I didn't have to deal with it. So
Yay.
yeah, yay. I will talk about the Death Guard game though, because Zach is someone in our local meta. He's someone I've played against before. He very nice guy. Like, we were probably 2 or 3 ciders deep by like round 2 on day 3, but it was very fun. He's playing Champions of Contagion, so he was playing with 1 very big Death Shroud brick with a character attached, and then 2 smaller Death Shroud units, and then 2 of the big Battle Bus Plague Marine units. So one with the fights first, Foul Blight Spawn, and then the other was the more like a melee combat unit. Pre-measuring really came down to that. This was a big game where I alluded to earlier, like the engineers and the Tauroxes were huge, because we were on layout 2 all day, layout on day 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically just parked a Taurox such in a way in my U in the middle where he could charge me, But if he did, then he was going to get heroic by Canis. And he wasn't going to get a ton of Plague Marines into or around because it was going to be very far charged from where his staging point in that like safe Rhino pocket is in your
Yeah.
deployment. So I got to go first, which was definitely nice here as well because he put a Rhino on the line behind his wall on turn 2. We'd already done all the pre-measure lasering where I couldn't really shoot it with. I might be able to advance and shoot one Russ onto an objective, but then that Russ is just dead.
Yeah.
So instead, I just scouted the Taurox directly forward, sent some engineers out, put the Taurox back in the hole, went and just blew up the mine, grenaded, put the Rhino to like 4, and then just bully charged it. And was like, you're not going to put this Rhino in this U. And then went and staged everywhere else. Next turn comes around, the engineers hop out of the whip, go jump, run at the next one, do the exact same thing to the other one, and just bully charge it. And just a combination of those, and then measuring. I was very meticulous with measurement. It was basically, all right, this thing can advance up to this far. If I hang out at this range, you can't put me in contagion because Champions in Contagion doesn't have a way to apply it from a distance in a meaningful way. I mean, not in the movement phase where I'm going to get Death Shrouded. So most of that game was measuring around, I'm going to keep, sure, you can get this Rogal that's kind of hovering its turret over the side objective in Contagion, but there's a Leman Russ behind it that's going to push you to a 9, or there's going to be somewhere where you can't get something to put me in Contagion. So making him play honestly with the Death Shroud was huge. It was also scorched, so the Cadians in the backfield can basically sticky it, then move away and just continue to provide deep strike support. I don't really need to stand on it if they can't get onto it. And then being able to just dictate shooting lanes. This was one where the layout really helped me, and it was something that when we looked at the missions after the fact, or like looking at Edmonton, like layout 2 was reasonably prevalent as well, because on the GW terrain, the objectives are very unsupported. Like you can be behind the footprint, but as soon as you touch the footprint, all bets are off. Like if you want to put a significant amount of OC on a point, you got to commit, and that's exactly what I want to see with demos and Leman Russes that can.
That's why I had 20 Krieg in my list, so that they could just stand in the open. There's not a lot that can one tap them, and there you go. But anyway, sorry.
No. It's a good game plan. I'd consider doing just the 20 Kriegers in this in some way, but I don't know what I would have cut now that I've been looking back. But for me, it was basically, I don't really have to worry about his side objective. I'm just going to keep blasting him off of it and not let him hold it. And I'm just going to focus on my triangle and just triangle with, overlapping screens of engineers or, commit a scout set. I think I threw away the scout set on like turn 3 because I just ripped him up, had him charge like a bloat drone or something just so that he wasn't going to be able to move it forward and put something else in contagion. So just measuring was really the big thing. And then having great profiles into, this is a good example of the demo Russ is doing awesome into a Death Guard opponent because he charges, he puts a Russ dangerously low, you give it orders, you auto pass it, you just have it shoot straight down and say bye-bye Death Shroud because, every wound is a 50-50 chance of just killing the Death Shroud. And you wound them on 2s, which is just tremendous. So
yeah. Nice, makes sense. So, I mean, overall, at the end, going 7-1 at Tacoma, pretty darn good. Only losing to someone you go back and it's like, yeah, I don't think I really could have won this one. Feels pretty good overall. How do you feel about your performance at this event?
For having just an absolute crash out army submission on Thursday of just screw it. I guess we're gonna play guards. Screw it. I'm gonna put Canis Rex in the list. Screw it. I don't think my sisters can kill Death Guard and Knights. I think Guard can. And I'm gonna play a list that I find enjoyable and I feel confident on. I think it did great. I think I missed best overall by 1 spot. Chris Jung from Heroic Knights won that because he was the place above me. So I think it was that 3% of opponent game win percentage. But Chris, if you're watching this, you were a delight and you're always welcome at our events. It's nice to see you. But I could not have asked for a better run. I also feel very vindicated by not losing to Knights, playing them 3 times, not losing to Death Guard, playing them twice, and basically having 5/8 of my games be against the current meta terrors. And that feels good.
That feels awesome. Yeah, I mean, going 7-1 with so many good players at this event too. Just like looking through the top 32, like I recognize almost all the names in the top 32, which always feels good. With that though, let's start talking about a couple of things. If you were to go to this event again, knowing the same mission pack, are there any changes you would make to your list?
That's a good question. It's funny. I've actually kind of pushed this one out of my mind because Canis Rex should not be 380
We were
points.
hoping it was going to be today.
I woke up, felt like a sad Christmas, sad boy on Christmas, just
Yeah.
like, oh,
Knights are still alive.
Yeah, dang it. And like, I hope that they're playable. I hope that they're not what they are now. But I think I'm already pivoting to. I drafted up a version a couple hours ago that's just another Dorn commander and another Taurox with Kasrkin, which I actually would have loved to have another transport full of dudes to just, especially with my game plan of just generally being just, go stand in front of them while my big tanks score and fall back. I don't think the game plan changes too much because the Dorn kind of just replaces Canis. He's not nearly as good as punching. I am considering combined. I am a big fan of Bulgrin. I think Bulgrin are very strong in today. The problem is they kind of suck on GW maps and
They're just kind of slow. Yeah.
They're just kind of slow. Teams maybe, but probably not for singles. But I think my immediate list pivot is probably triple Dorn, another Taurox and Kasrkin. I've also considered just a regular Dorn Grand Strat or extra order for Commander Fire, and then a Hellhound just to strip cover and kind of help. I didn't use Furious Cannonade as much as I thought I was going to this weekend.
Is that the bonus AP strat in Hammer?
Bonus AP, because you have it, and I used it against the Death card a couple of times just to like remove saves from like Marines.
Yeah.
But most of the time I was putting things on Involts that cared. So that's why I don't really default to a Hellhound immediately. Is like Ignore Cover is very nice. It does kind of smooth the Dorns that are like AP2 in a Top Gun, but so much in our current meta is on a 4-up invul anyway, so who cares about AP2? So that was kind of, I would probably put slam another Dorn, and then either a transport or another cruddy T10 vehicle in there.
Totally fair. So the other question about that is, obviously, we were hoping Knights are going to get nerfed today. Now we're hoping it's next week. Until Knights get inevitably nerfed, whenever it is, what are your thoughts on Canis' role in the Guard?
I think he is your third Dorn commander. I think he could be your second Dorn commander, but I don't think he's better than no Dorn commanders. I think you should run at least 2, and I think you're insane not running any. But I will probably continue to use him as sort of like a support tank, but in more of a melee role, because I often wasn't really committing him. Either he goes and dies early because that's his job, or I would hold him back until they deployed like Death Shroud units that I could then go shoot and then go punch something else that wasn't going to kill me. And that's how I would recommend using him for any Guard players wanting to slot him in the next week and a half, probably while he's still the best choice. He's basically just don't talk to me or my son ever again for your Dorn, for your Dorn commanders. Is pretty much what he does.
Yeah. So. Now, I want to get something a little bit more, because you just said something about the Rogal Dorn commanders, that you're insane for not running any. I got a little bit of flack in the stream that I was doing yesterday for people who are like, Rogal Dorn commanders suck! Sell them to the rest of the people. I've tried to do it before. Basically, everyone I know has tried to do it before, but I want to get it from a new voice. Maybe they'll listen to this guy now that he's gone 1840? 1837 ELO, went 7-1 Tacoma. Rogal Dorn commanders.
I'm sorry you had to fight that battle. But two things. One, 2 and combined seems like the best way to just ruin someone's day, in my opinion, because you usually have more Scout Sentinels than I do. You don't have access to veteran crew. So I can see where people are looking at like 1 and a regular for combined. I think in Hammer it's 2 for sure. I can also see 2 in combined because Lord help us, we need something that just shoots a lot of shots. It just shoots a lot of shots. It's tough. It's too cheap still. But I get so much value out of these. And I'll tell you, here's my plea to the masses. If you're playing it in Hammer, you have a safety net with a fallback and shoot strat. That's great. If you're playing combined and it gets touched, you've done something horribly wrong. So the fact that if you're not shooting them, they lose so much of their value. To me, that's why I ran Hammer, was because I wanted that crutch. I wanted the ability to, on a dime, decide this Dorn has had enough and he's going to just shell the heck out of you at point blank range. So.
There's a couple things on the Rogal Dorn commander. Then we'll get a couple closing thoughts out of this. For me, again, I don't remember who said this. I feel like I heard this on Stat Check, but someone was like, it feels like every gun on a Rogal Dorn has 1 more AP than it's supposed to. And I disagree with that until you factor in the fact that they have access to +1 AP in all the detachments that you're going to be taking them in. They're actually +1 AP. And the other thing that I think is kind of crazy that a lot of people don't really think about is the hit, wound, and damage reroll 4 melta guns, whether it's in hammer or in combined, is insane. Like, I see, that's one of the things that I think I see, like, one of the small technical things that I see a lot of guard players doing wrong is not doing their order of their shooting with the Rogal Dorn correctly. Into any single target unit, so this is like into your Primarchs, into your vehicles, into whatever, you start with the Meltas. You hit reroll that, you wound reroll that, you damage reroll that. And suddenly, your 4 Melta shots is very consistently like 3 Melta saves that they now have to take. One of them is probably doing 5 damage. It's absolutely crazy. And then if you have rerolls left over, then we can do the other ones. But yeah,
absolutely. Doing the shooting order correct is so important to get the most out of them. And I 100% hear you. Like, if I walked around and watched a lot of guard games when I could, and definitely a lot of like auto cannons first, and it was like, oh buddy, like, I'm not gonna disrupt a game state, but like, maybe do this a little differently next time, and you'll feel the impact. But definitely encourage folks to I mentioned it earlier. I'm very CP starved in this, so I have to be very careful about how much I'm using. I'm never really going to have enough to use on a whoop reroll or a damage reroll. So, the Dorns help smooth that. Yeah. But you functionally, like, you just get like 3 free command rerolls per each one of these tanks. And if you're taking veteran crew or a scout sentinel, you don't even need to use the hit reroll unless you roll a 2, essentially. They're wild. They're nutty. I love these units so much.
They're definitely propping up the guard codex right now to a degree. I think if we lose that unit, like, guard just goes, oh god, what do we do next? But anyway, with that out of the way, I always like ending these with a couple of hot takes. You said you've seen these before. Let's go ahead and start doing it. What do you think right now is the most overrated unit in the guard codex?
Overrated unit?
Yeah, people think it's good, and you're just like,
Before this weekend, I would have said Kasrkin, because mine have historically underperformed. They just always underperform, and I've never been impressed. Overrated, I'm going to say Exterminators. Because you have hammer for +1 AP, and you're already kind of at that danger close shooting anyway. Combined, you just have +1 AP on a tank that cares. And you have Hellhounds. What more could you want with +1 AP and Hellhounds? Like,
I want to tell the Land Raiders that they don't get a save through Smoke and Arv and Contempt, Ken.
But like I'm used to playing Castigators with Sisters, and like I like the autocannon ones, but the autocannon ones hit on 3s all the time, and stack AP and have twin linked and do all those things. But for 30 points less, I have started putting fewer and fewer in my lists, and now you're telling me that this tank is 20 to 30 points more expensive than that and shoots worse and doesn't have rerolls and stuff. So the Exterminators for me are sort of like, I know they have their place, but I think they're often overrated. God,
that's a good answer. I mean,
I'm gonna say of that, I think it's probably that, or like maybe the artillery team. I think people just put too much stock in those things.
Have you seen my rants on these recently?
No, I haven't.
I did an entire video not that long ago. So I have been tracking for the past month or so. I've been looking at every guard list at every GT in the world, okay? I've been manually going through all the lists. Our overall win rate, just like every game, doesn't matter what your list is, our overall win rate is about 47%, okay? I want you to guess what the win rate, if you have at least one artillery team in your list, becomes.
Oh, at least one? Like,
at least
so Cadian and Cadian.
Oh, no, just the artillery team specifically.
Oh, okay. So not like a creep.
I mean,
like
I also have the numbers for indirect in general. Like, if you want numbers based on what kind of indirect, I have that too.
I feel like, all right, guard players, don't hate me. I feel like because you're taking the artillery team, you might be taking a siege regiment, which means I think I'm going to say 35%. Just going to go bold.
It's not far off. It's 39%. We are 50 and 78 if you include at least one artillery team, which is about the same as if you put any indirect in your list at all. We are 39.7%, whereas the artillery is 39.2. So it's like, guys, just stop. I promise.
Give us original bridgehead back, and then you can have
yes, then we can talk
because
about
the reroll ones. Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and flip the script. Let's try and end this a little bit more on a positive note. Give me 2 units in the Guard Codex that you think are underrated. You don't see them in lists, and they should be.
Ratlings. Every guard list I write starts with 5 Ratlings. Meal Team 6.
Meal Team 6.
Meal Team 6. Chris P. Kyle. They continue to just I have never seen a unit just for so few points dictate the pace of a game so often, and just played well. They're nuts. I love those things.
Yeah.
I love those little. I love my little idiots.
So I wanna get a question
Yeah,
in about
yeah,
that while you think
yeah,
about the other one. I've
yeah.
always felt every time I played Ratlings, they die, right? Like, to be fair, like in a lot of games, that is kind of their job. Like, you cannot scout here. That is one of the first things they do. What do they do in games? Or firstly, how often do they just die if you're going second? And the second part of that is what do you do with them when they live?
So two things. Usually when I'm playing them, I'm usually using them to deny scout aggressively if they have like scout I'm concerned with. If it's
Mhm.
scout I'm not concerned with, I don't throw them away. The second part of that is it's definitely like 50% of the time they die probably by the end of turn two because they like got into a place they really shouldn't have.
Mhm.
But so often for me, it's I'm going to put them in a place where they can't easily get to them, or if they want to get to them, they have to charge them, which then means if they want to pile into onto an objective, I'm dictating the places my opponent can move with Ratlings rather than using them to expect like a grand move block or something like that. Sometimes they get to do an action. Sometimes they get to just die for the Emperor. The funniest story I have from this weekend is five of them got charged by a solo Lord Exultant because I had killed his unit. The guy charged. He killed three of them, which is a lot of ones. There was a lot of
Mhm.
ones, but it's a dice game. I had taken a random wound off of him with a stubber, and then the two surviving Ratlings blew his head off and then move blocked to keep him from going any further with a tank. And like that, you can't make this. You can't make this shit up sometimes. And
Yeah,
like
that's awesome.
I love those units to death. If I throw them away, it's usually in a way that they are in an uncomfortable place. Like if they are playing against like plague bearers or something, it's oh, you want to come charge these? Well, cool. You're going to be on the footprint or you're going to be on the objective, so I can get overwhelming force or something. So
Totally fair. Yeah, I'll have to try them again. I haven't been able to figure out how to use them, but maybe that's a skill issue on my part. Give me one more.
I'm going to say Leman Russ Demolishers because they really. I think that those are a sleeper that I think people have forgotten about. And in this world of you need to wound T7 Terminators and we need to wound Knights on three sometimes, and you don't want to play combined all the time. I can see them kind of moving away for the regular Lemans and combined. I totally get it with full rerolls and lethals. That's wild. I love those tanks. But if you're choosing any of the other options, it's just nice to have something that just on value does two things. One, you can be on an objective and shoot, and two, it wounds really nasty things much more easily. Because in my last game against Joseph, I had one in combat with an Armiger. He was on uh, one uh, one wound remaining. My tank was on one wound remaining, and I really needed him to die so I could then bully charge the Armiger with a Dorn. I popped the everything gets hazardous, everything ignores mods. He passed his leadership test. The Dorn commander gave him a crisp salute, and then he shot an Atropos to death. Like it just sometimes works. So I'm a bit, and he blew up, which is all I needed because then he did some wounds to an Armiger, and then Dorn got to go bully charge, and that game was kind of over from that because it
Yeah.
big move block. So Demolishers, and I don't think he would have reasonably killed an Atropos if he wasn't a Demolisher. So
Yeah.
I think they get some brownie points
That's
from me.
totally fair. I think there is a lot of value there because Knight players in particular, they all have a story about how one of these Demolishers just killed an entire Knight just outright. And that happens. You can't do that with a Leman Russ Battle Tank. You can do that with a Leman Russ Demolisher. It just sometimes happens because we're playing a dice game. With that, though, Ken, we're a little bit past the hour that I normally try and keep these to. Do you have any closing thoughts before we send you out?
No, I mean, thanks for having me. B, love our PNW meta. So anyone that sees me on the tournament strip, feel free to say hello. It's always good to see you. And for all of our guard folks, keep innovating because there is some like hidden gas in all of these. But if something's not working, it's insanity to try the same thing and expect different results. So it's all we got to be thinking about pivoting and stuff too. So it's been cool to see recon builds. It's been cool to see combined builds. And Godspeed anyone that's playing Canis in your list for the next week and a half. I hope he's no longer there.
You don't have a lot of time before it goes away, but thank you so much, Ken, for tuning in. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been another Tactical Debrief. This has been Ken Bush. He went 7-1 at Tacoma. We'll see you guys all next time. Bye-bye.
Take care.